Rebecca Heiss, welcome to The Elegant Warrior.
Thank you so much for having me on, Heather. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am excited. I was telling you before we started that I love your book, Springboard, Transform Stress to Work for You. And I think it's such an important time for this book because I feel like during the pandemic years, people were really talking about the soft life and taking care of themselves, and people were working from home. And now, whether we like it or not, the world seems to be back. And so this idea of thinking about stress differently is so important right now.
I couldn't agree more. And, we've had for years, we've been sold this idea that stress is really bad and we have to get rid of it. And there's so many challenges with that. First of all, I don't think you can get rid of stress. And even if you could, I don't think that's ideal because the only people that have no stress are dead. And that should not be our goal, right? Like, our stress response really is a feature, not a bug in our system. And the more we begin to work with it, the better our lives can be.
Yeah. And you give us, that's easily said, but you really dive into why that's true and then how to do it. And the how to is so important. I love, though, that from the very beginning of the book, you say, after you're done with this book, you will not feel less stressed, but you will feel differently about stress. And I love that promise because a lot of people are reading books, listening to podcasts, doing workouts to feel less stressed. Tell us a little bit about why that's just impossible.
Well, humans are a little bit weird. And I love that about humans. Like, we're the only animals that we're aware of that create our own stress with our thoughts. So, lions, this is one of my favorite examples. Lions, people think of them as like really good hunters. I don't think I can out-hunt a lion, but they fail 80% of the time that they hunt. But here's the thing. Immediately afterwards, the lion just lays down and takes a nap. Like, that is their go-to thing. Humans, if we were in this situation, would go, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible hunter. I can't believe I'm so lousy. Like, why didn't I catch that gazelle? And, blah, blah, blah. And we beat ourselves up. So we actually create our own stress from our thoughts. And my research from last year shows that we create more stress trying to get rid of our stress than actually just embracing it. So we'll start there.
Yeah, and I love that because we do create so much stress thinking that we're stressed and thinking I shouldn't be stressed and how can I stop being stressed instead of sort of understanding that it's part of the human condition and then learning to optimize it.
Yeah. And the problem I think too is that we've really internalized it and we say, oh, this is my problem. I'm lousy because I've tried meditation. I've tried yoga. I've tried like all of these things and I still have stress. I'm broken. And y'all, if you are listening right now, this is maybe the most important thing I'll say to you. You aren't broken, right? That is, you are supposed to have stress. You're supposed to have that response. And so rather than beat ourselves up about something that's completely natural and normal, we need to rewire our thinking about how stress actually operates in our lives.
Yeah, and you give us a very phenomenal toolkit to do so. And the first part is you go through what I would call the 3 T's in my brain.
Yeah.
It's not a tiger, transform the energy, and set the trajectory. Let's start with it's not a tiger. Tell the audience about that, and I have a story about that for you. So.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay. So the tiger is really based from Robert Sapolsky, who's another stress physiologist. I steal this from him. I want to give him full credit because it's brilliant. He talks about our stress response being adapted for 3 minutes of screaming terror through the savannah, right? Getting chased by a lion, tiger, or bear. Oh my. And so we have this singular stress response, this life and death response to things like an overwhelming email box or inbox, or, our kids needing to be picked up from school and we have to wait in this traffic jam. And like, these are not life and death situations, but our body doesn't know that because it treats everything like a tiger. So the first step is really all about recognizing it's not a tiger. And once we realize this isn't life and death, we're not going to be dead in the next 3 minutes, we can use all of the energy that our body is providing us for something that's a little bit more beneficial.
Yeah, I love it. When my background is I was a trial attorney for many years, and it's a stressful job, right? There's a winner. It's like, I know you're into sports. I often say that it's sports, politics, and trial law, where there's a winner and a loser, and it's very public and everyone knows. And so it's a stressful job. And I would get stressed. And my mentor had been a DEA agent before he became a lawyer. And I remember one time I ran down to his office and someone had filed a motion against me that could have been dispositive, and I was freaking out. And he stopped me and he said, "Heather, is anyone shooting at you?" And I was like, "Well, no." And that kind of like, it calmed everything down for me, because to recognize that this is not one of those life or death situations puts everything into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to invite people who are having that experience to what I call invite the tiger in for tea.
Yes.
Also recognize that, it feels like that, and that's valid. Like, it is okay.
Yes.
So take those 3 minutes of screaming terror and feel it all. Like, feel that anxiety, feel that stress, because sometimes, and it sounds like your mentor kind of timed it well,
Yes.
but sometimes, like in those early moments, if somebody looks at you and says, "Oh, calm down, you're not being shot at," it's actually more eruptive.
Yes.
So give yourself permission to feel the stress. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point, because if you start to try to think your way out of something that you're feeling in your body, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
And one of the things that you say in that part of the book that has stuck with me, even this morning, I was starting to think my way into a stress spiral. And I was remembering that people with meaningful lives report having more stress. Tell the listeners about that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So this is the 2013 study that looked at correlates of meaningful, purposeful lives. And it turns out the number one correlate to a meaningful, purposeful life is stress. So past stressful events, current state of stress, and even future worry and anxiety are highly correlated to stress. And if you're like me, you're sitting there going, I don't think so. Like, I think I can live a pretty meaningful life and reduce a lot of my stress. So I did a follow-up question to this study, because it didn't resonate for me. And so I'll ask your listeners, and I'll ask you this same question, which is, I want you to think of a project or an accomplishment that you're most proud of. And then go back in time to when you were in the middle of that project, right? What was your stress level?
Yeah, like 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
On a scale of 0 to 10, you're at a 12.
Yeah.
And when people recognize, oh, right, it's easy to see that in retrospect and say, yeah, that was a meaningful thing that I did. But in the moment, we have to begin to recognize that, stress is a barometer for how much we care. Right, in this moment.
It's so funny, because I immediately went to some of the cases I tried, and very, very stressful for me, and also very meaningful. I'm enormously proud of those experiences. And I've done some other things, like I've run a marathon, for example.
Nice.
Not stressful for me. I took it very I was just like, well, whatever. I'll just finish. I don't care if, it was very, it was fun, but it wasn't stressful. And in retrospect, it's not as meaningful for me.
Exactly.
So it's a really good question to remind yourself that the stuff that you care about most and that's going to create the most meaning and purpose when you look back on it is what's giving you that feeling inside.
That's it. I mean, I always say nobody gets stressed out over their shoe coming untied. Right? It's meaningless. It's
That's
just
right.
it's an inconvenience.
So good. And then once you have felt that 3 minutes of the screaming craziness, and then you've taken the tiger to tea, and I love that, because it reminds me of the Buddhism. They talk about sitting down with Maya for tea.
Yes.
So I love that. Now you move on to the second step, which is to transform the energy. And I think that this is where the fearless stress formula comes in, right?
Yeah. So my fearless stress formula is really those 3 T's that you're talking about. It's the 3-step process. It's recognizing it's not a tiger. And then how do we begin to transform this energy? And, I'm going to stress everybody out right now and take you back to high school physics. If you'll remember, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred, right? It can be shifted. And I think where people get into trouble is we try and get rid of the energy. We try and calm down, right? And that's the advice that we give to ourselves before big talks, or like a big, in your case, you're going on trial, or going to trial, and it's this really stressful moment, like, okay, calm down, take some breaths. When in reality, your body, that stress is preparing you to perform, right? So trying to fight against it just creates a spiral. So my ask is, instead, how can you use that stress to get excited, right? Same level of arousal, different interpretation of what it means.
Yeah, and when you can do that, because I think back again to the trials, and when I couldn't, it probably impacted my body like more long term. But sometimes I could. And when I prepare now, a lot of my work is witness preparation for witnesses who are testifying either at trial or at deposition. And I say to them, it can be fun. And let's talk about ways this could be fun. And I can see a shift in their physicality when they get there.
That's so interesting. And what you're talking about, that like the physicality piece is often overlooked. Yeah. I tell people, I'm a professional speaker. I'm on stages every week in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I get nervous every single time. And the day I don't is the day I quit, because it's no longer meaningful, right? But that nervousness, that's high level of anxiety. That's stress. And I tell myself, get excited. This means something. And I throw my shoulders back. I put a big smile on my face. And here's the crazy thing that most people don't recognize. We think that we smile because we're happy. But in fact, we are happy because we're smiling. So the way we position our bodies actually impacts all the things that we feel and the things that other people feel. So now my audience is responding to me as if I was excited. They're excited now. And it feeds this loop where, humans are incredibly contagious. So we're feeding on each other emotionally, and everybody's having a better experience as a result.
Yeah, I love it. You talk about that whole, like, it's not really fake it till you make it. And in my book, I say, don't fake it till you make it, but show it till you grow it. Because
I love that.
you have that bit of excitement inside of you, right?
Yeah.
And so let it, that little bit, I say this to witnesses, let that little bit show, because the jury, your jury of your audience, your jury in the negotiation room, your jury of your boss, they will feel it and give it back to you, and then it will grow. So
show it until you can grow it. Oh, so I wish I'd had that.
Well,
golly.
So that part of the book, when you talk about say I'm excited, and say it to yourself. And
absolutely.
There's also Ethan Cross's work, like say Heather's excited.
That's
say
right.
Say it in the third
Create
person.
that emotional distancing.
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you say, the smiling and acting as if it creates evidence for yourself that you can believe that this is actually a fun thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you see, I know you see this work for you, the people that you work with, are they able to embrace this idea enough to create that evidence? Because I think that there's that hump there, right? Like, how can it really be that if I do this, it's going to make that big of a difference?
Yeah. And Heather, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I tell people, you are going to think you're failing, right? Yeah. Because the anxiety and stress doesn't go away. Right. You feel like you're lying to yourself. Because you are, like, yes, right? And our brain believes the story we tell it. So with time, as we practice, as we continue this practice, we start to see these small little shifts where we're like, oh, wow, am I actually excited? Yeah. And again, carrying the excitement and the nervousness together is really important to recognize, right? One isn't just shifting into the other. It's you're holding two things at the same time.
Yeah, which is hard for all of us, right?
Yes,
there's like everybody's like, well, wait, what about us black and white
but
thinkers?
I just don't want that,
yes.
right? Yeah, I don't want it to feel like that.
Well, that's it.
Sorry,
right?
sorry.
Exactly.
I'm one of those realists, right? I'm like, you're not gonna be less stressed. You're still gonna feel it. And anybody that tells you otherwise, I'm sorry, but they're selling you something.
Well, and that's it. That's why this book is so important. And for every listener who struggles with anxiety, stress, the nervousness about anything, this book is so helpful, because Rebecca is not going to fake you out. She's not going to lie to you, but she is going to give you, we are just skimming the surface about the tiger. She goes into exercises. There's QR codes in the book.
Yeah.
And she really gives you the work to do so that you can actually do this. And then transforming the energy. And Rebecca, you talk about transforming from that fear to curiosity. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite facts, like the little fun fact, right? Curiosity and fear cannot coexist. And the reason for that is because we have no brain mechanism that allows for those two things to be held in the same space. Because for 200,000 plus years, nobody ever had a tiger charging them and was like, like, I wonder how many stripes it's got. That they were eliminated from the population. And as a result, our brains didn't adapt this capacity to hold those two things together, which is a great feature for us. Yeah. Because if we're aware of it, we can get curious and it temporarily will kick us out of fear. Yeah. Now look, we're human. We're going to slide right back in. Great. Ask another question. This is part of like having the tiger to tea. Like all of these, I have it broken down into 3 steps, but they all kind of slide back into each other. This is a continuous process, right? So the tiger's sitting there and you're asking it questions. You're like, what can I learn from you? How can I grow with you? You know, what will I discover about myself? What does this mean? Why am I stressed? You know, all of those questions help move us beyond the fear and take it outside of ourselves. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think you're so right, and I love curiosity. I mean, we talk about curiosity a lot in my work as well, because you win or lose with questions, right?
Yeah,
and so
true.
It's like it's everything, and to go back to that, and to when you feel the fear in your body, get curious about the feeling, and you give the reader really good questions to ask to get curious. You know, you make it as easy as possible. While this is never going to be easy per se, you really do make it as easy as possible with this book. It's really phenomenal.
Thank you. Thanks. You know, and I think the challenge that so many people have in this moment is when we feel the fear, we naturally want to escape it. We want to run away from it. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's probably the worst thing you can do, because the outcomes that you're going to have are not ideal. The stress is going to continue to find you. Yeah. And so whether you're escaping through alcohol or your phone or like whatever that avoidance, or even things like massage, or, you know, the stress is going to sit there on the other side. Yep. So the trajectory piece is really about taking those small steps into the stressor, like running at the roar of the tiger.
Yeah. I think that is, again, scary, but your point is really well taken, that it's not going away. You know, you might be able to outdrink, outscroll this tiger, but there's another tiger coming tomorrow. Right. And at some point, the stress is you are going to feel it. It is the trajectory piece is really interesting. I do want to make sure I love the story about your husband and racing the car. Oh gosh. And we want the listener to, there are so many good stories in this book, guys. This is just a taste for you. But I loved this one. My boyfriend's into F1, though he doesn't actually do the racing.
See, same.
So so this really resonated. Tell the listeners that story.
Yeah, so I challenge people throughout the book to do these discomfort challenges. I call them tiger training, where like you're showing up and you're doing something that's really uncomfortable and outside of your comfort zone. And I try and practice what I preach. So my husband is very comfortable behind a race car, and he's like, "Why don't we go racing?" It's like, okay, that'll be really outside my comfort zone. And I get behind this car and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't so hard, right? I've done it all morning. I figured it out. You go slow into the corners, you accelerate through, got this. And I'm representing my entire gender on the track. So like, the instructor is in the front, my husband's there, I'm right behind them. And I'm like, I'm going to show these boys what's up, right? I'm just going to go blowing right by them. And I hit the accelerator and immediately I spin out. And I mean, like, it's embarrassing off the track. And I'm just sitting there like cursing, but crying those angry hot tears, like the shame tears. Yeah. And I get out of the car and I have this choice to make, right? What most people do, and what I want to do, I'm trying excusing myself from this situation. When we don't have certainty, when we are in chaos, when we are in a stress response, we want more than anything to control the outcome. We want control. And the only way that I get to control that outcome is if I don't get back in the car, if I don't try that again. Right. And so that is everything that I want to do. But I force myself to get back in the car. Like I get through those 3 minutes of screaming terror. I allow myself to feel it. I invite the tiger in. I talk with my tiger. I get curious and I'm like, you know what? It's really easy to measure all the costs of our actions. I might spin out again. I might look foolish. I might be embarrassed. But what we forget to measure are the costs of our inactions. Like, what if I don't get back in the car? Like, what about that? Then I guarantee you, I'm going to lay there the next night and I'm going to go, why didn't you? Like, why didn't you step up, stand out, raise your hand, set the example for the next 8-year-old kid that's watching you? You know, so these little trajectories are taking those small, scary actions that we don't necessarily want to take. But we recognize that the cost of inaction is often so much higher. So trajectory is all about action.
Yeah, I love it. I also think, you know, as I was reading, I was thinking about, and I know some of my listeners, because they send me questions, some of my listeners struggle with chronic pain and trauma stored in the body, and the differences there. And I think, I want you to explain this to me, but I think one of the things that is either said in the book or inferred, or else I just took it that way, is a lot of the difference here is helplessness.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about that. Yeah, so learned helplessness it's poorly named, honestly. So when it was originally studied, when it was originally documented, it was the 1960s. It was an experiment. Actually, I'm going to run through the experiment quickly because I think it deserves time. They had 2 different conditions that they put these dogs into, and the dogs were shocked, right? They were on an electrical grid, and the first condition, we'll call them Group A, had the ability to turn off the shocks by pressing this button with their nose, right? And so they quickly learned to do that. The second group, when they pressed that button, nothing changed. They continued to be shocked. So then they took both of these groups of dogs, they put them in a second condition in which the floor was once again electrified, so they were receiving electrical shocks, but there was a small barrier that the dogs, all they had to do was jump over the barrier to safety. And immediately the first group, Group A, that had the ability to turn off the shocks, jumped over the barrier. And this is where things get really sad because Group B, the ones that didn't feel like they had any control over their situation, just laid down and accepted the shocks, despite the fact that safety was just on the other side. And this research has been updated in the last few years to recognize this actually isn't a learned behavior. We can induce learned helplessness in 30 seconds. It is the default behavior of the brain to shut down when we believe that something is out of our control. And so we stop taking actions. We stop looking for solutions. We stop doing anything that might serve us because we throw our hands up and go, it's a waste of time. Whatever story it is that we're telling, it's not worth it. I can't get out of this. I can't escape. Yeah. And I think so many of us accept these shocks that we don't necessarily have to, including the shock of, stress is bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and hold it in our bodies. I think that's part of, listen, chronic pain is beyond the conversation that we're having here.
Yes, sorry, let's be clear about that. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, well, no, but I'm the one that brought it up, but I just do know that for many people, they're like, well, stress is bad for my body. And I understand that interpretation. And I think what Rebecca's doing is inviting you to think about it just a little bit differently. Because when you read the book, and I really, especially those people, I really, really want you to get the book. Because when you do, you'll see that it's not about powering through and allowing yourself to be in pain. Right. It's little tiny shifts that you're taking with these actions, right?
Yeah, and let's return to the chronic pain for a second, because I feel like what I just described, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking to your listeners in chronic pain and saying, you've learned helplessness. Like, no. Oh my gosh, no, I don't think that's horrible. Right. That's horrible. No. What I will say is taking those actions is so difficult, especially when you are in this state where it is outside of your control, right? There's absolutely nothing you can do about that chronic pain, and that's horrific. So what is the small action you can take that gives you some agency? Yes. And it's not about necessarily relieving the pain. It's just giving you some control back over your body. And that's the key there. That's what I want to talk to.
And it does fit in, and I don't think anyone would have misinterpreted it, but good point.
I just want to be clear.
No, I get it. And it does fit in, and there's a lot of research out there right now about that. They tell people, there's a book called Mind Over Body that is saying that you want to almost ignore it, be indifferent to it, because that gives you that control back instead of trying to control it in a way that you can't. So
that's right. Because pain is a signal. That's all it is, right? It's just a signal saying, hey, pay attention, there's something happening here. Yep. And this is where, inviting the tiger in for tea, it's like, oh, thank you, body. I recognize this is happening right now. I appreciate it. I don't need this anymore. thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's going to shift or change your pain, but just an acknowledgement and letting go.
Yeah, so good, so good, and so important. Now you do at towards the end. Well, one thing I just want to say this quote because, and I hope I remember it because I only have my shorthand. I don't.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. I mean, we can pull the book out. It's fine.
It's about post-traumatic growth and the idea that it coexists. I think that some people, well, why don't you describe post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth, and then the idea of where happiness fits in. It's a quote from somebody named Richard or something that you
Yes, and we're going to have to pull up that quote because I'll butcher it as well. So, look, let's talk about post-traumatic stress disorder because almost everybody has heard of PTSD, right? And PTSD affects about 8% of the population. That's diagnosed, right? I'd make the argument that probably all of us are experiencing PTSD.
Yeah.
Right? Like, life is traumatic. It just is. And so we're going to have these responses to big trauma, little things that accumulate over time. And there's a lot of sort of the diagnostics of PTSD that I think people would look at and go, yeah, that's me. The shift that I really want to bring people into is what we don't talk about, which is PTG, which is post-traumatic growth. And that affects 80% of people, like, automatically without them doing anything, just going through the trauma. And this is one of those wild things that people are like, no way. I'm talking massive traumas, people losing legs, losing loved ones. And it's not that they are happy about this situation, but many of them say it is the most important thing that ever happened. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
And that is a whoa moment.
Yeah, and that's exactly the quote that what you said. He said is something like, it's not happiness. I think that sometimes people think post-traumatic growth is like, oh, I'm so happy.
Right.
Instead,
I'm so glad this occurred.
Right. It coexists with the distress. The distress is there. The stress is there, pretty consistent with your entire book, and the growth is there as well.
That's right.
And I think listeners, it's really important that you know, and we're not going to talk about what they were because I want you to read the book, but Rebecca had a childhood trauma that was really not a small thing.
Yeah.
And then recently had a friend go through something, also not a small thing. And she talks about these things in the book. So she knows from where she comes. So,
man, you're making me tear up just even saying that. It's a good story, I will say, and a happy one, which is interesting because I think of it as very happy, and that's, I know we just said it's not happiness, but in this case, because of the outcome, yes, it was traumatic, and if the outcome had been different, there certainly would not be happiness, but yeah, that growth definitely coexists in that trauma, and there is no escaping. And again, it comes full circle back to what we started with, which is meaning and purpose in our lives comes from these traumatic, stressful events.
Yeah, the reason it comes full circle is because it's all truth. And it all connects to one another. And the book does that so well. Sometimes I read every book from every author that comes on the podcast. And sometimes when I'm reading it, I feel like I have to go back because I want to be able to sort of create an outline so that I can. And this book, I didn't have to like check myself and go back and wait, what are we talking about now? It's written like a scientist. I mean, your background is clear in the book. You wrap up the book towards the end. Well, one thing before we get there, I just want to mention this because I have so many basketball players in my life. My brother played at Colby, and his wife is really into it. And he went to UNC for her graduate school. She went to Duke for graduate school.
Ooh.
So we are a basketball family.
Okay.
And you, as a basketball player, when you were younger, created Game Changer Basketball. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, and I again won't give away the whole story because it actually involves my friend who went through this trauma, but a dear friend of mine and myself co-founded this nonprofit called Game Changer Basketball, and it's literally for women who want to continue to play basketball in their lives, and maybe have never played, maybe played in high school, maybe played in college. Shoot, there's women that have played professionally or overseas that are part of this movement, And the challenge that we found is it was hard to find gym space.
Yeah.
Like I travel a lot. I can walk into any gym and I can find a pickup game, but it's almost always exclusively men. Yeah. And we wanted to create an opportunity for women to keep playing and keep enjoying community together and exercise together. And and this all sprung from really a selfish move on my part. I wanted to keep playing. And so this is ridiculous, y'all. I'm going to tell you the story. I decided I was going to go back at age 40 to play D1 basketball because I was like, I'm still eligible. I got years of eligibility left. And I mean, I trained up, I talked to coaches, I was all in. And unfortunately, I'm about 20 years plus too late based on my eligibility rules from the NCAA.
Man.
But this selfish move helped me recognize, wait, let's turn this outward. What else can I do that is more community oriented? And this is one of the things I talk about in the trajectory step is when we move from self to other. One of the big things that we don't talk about enough with stress is the oxytocin response. Mm-hmm. And oxytocin is a major stress hormone, but it's a hormone of community and connection and love and bonding. And so in this very stressful time that my co-founder and I were experiencing, we decided to come together and create this community. And it is spectacular. We have close to 400 members nationwide now. It is growing exponentially. I am so excited. So if your listeners play basketball, check us out at We Are Game Changer. Yeah.
I'll put a link to it.
Yeah.
Some of my family members may be checking it out.
And listen, if you've never played too, like that's the joy. Yeah. Come join. It's all about community.
It's so cool. I could talk to you all day, Rebecca, but you talked about just now about community, and it's interesting because at the beginning we were talking about the feeling alone in your stress, and so I think that your Building Hope protocol, which is one of the things that you end the book with, there's 3 steps to that as well. We will make the listener read so that they get them, but the last one is that support system. Give us a little sense of, again, just why that's so important when it comes to building hope.
Hope exists at the same. You only need hope in stress, right? This is you're not hoping in a moment of great joy. It is really important to have, especially in stress. And so when we have community, and again, I think this is something I just talked about, and we're going through discomfort together, we actually become this much closer to the people around us. Because all of the challenges that we experience, all of the weirdnesses that we think we have and we're alone in, it turns out your story is my story and my story is your story, right? Like we may not experience the exact same stressor at the exact same time, but y'all, we're going through life and we're going through these stressors together. They may be a little asynchronous, but ultimately that community is so important. Yeah. So find your people. Let them find you. That's also part of it.
It's a really good point. Like to accept the help and accept the support and be willing to be vulnerable enough. And that word I think is a little loaded right now, but be vulnerable enough to say, I'm hurting, I'm scared, I'm stressed. There's a tiger I'm trying to have tea with, and I could use you to join us at the table. Yeah,
and seriously, your stress response helps you with that. It is actively activating you to go seek and receive, as well as give help in those most stressful moments. So it's pretty powerful.
So good. Rebecca, I love the book. It is a great mixture of science and story, and it's done really, really well. And it leaves the reader with things to do that are not overwhelming, but do make a difference. So thank you for writing the book. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's truly a gift to be here.